For over 1,000 years, one plant quietly decided what food tasted like in the Western world, and almost no one alive today knows its name. Not because it failed, not because it was weak, not because it disappeared naturally, but because it was too good, too resilient, and too difficult to control. In the year 800 AD, Charlemagne issued a sweeping agricultural order to stabilize food production across his empire. It was not symbolic, it was mandatory. Every imperial estate was required to grow specific plants essential for survival. The document, known today as the Capitulaire de Villais, listed dozens of crops, but buried in one compulsory section was a plant considered so foundational that an estate growing without it was deemed incomplete. This plant was not wheat, it was not barley, it was not onion or garlic, it was lovage. Long before supermarkets, before refrigeration, before industrial farming, lovage was not optional. It was infrastructure. The Romans treated it the same way. In their kitchens, lovage was not a garnish. It was the base note, the flavor everything else was built upon. The oldest surviving Roman cookbook uses lovage more than any other herb, more than salt, more than garlic. That tells you something important. Cultures do not repeatedly rely on a plant for centuries unless it delivers consistent results with minimal effort. Lovage did exactly that. It fed armies, it flavored stews, it preserved food. It returned every spring without replanting. It survived cold, heat, neglect, and war. And then, in less than one human lifetime, it vanished from everyday use in America. Not gradually, not accidentally. Systematically. The disappearance of lovage is not a mystery of botany. It is a case study in economics. To understand why lovage was erased, you have to understand what kind of plant it is. Lovage is a perennial member of the same family as celery, carrots, and parsley, but it behaves nothing like modern celery. It does not die each year. It does not require reseeding. Once planted, it grows back for 15 to 20 years. It develops a deep taproot that anchors it permanently. It grows, tall, often over 6 feet, with thick hollow stems and dark green leaves that smell like celery amplified tenfold. One plant can supply a household for years. You do not harvest lovage all at once. You harvest as needed. A leaf here, a stem there. The plant keeps growing. This is where the problem begins. Industrial agriculture does not like plants that grow on their own schedule. It does not like variation. It does not like intensity. It does not like anything that resists standardization. Lovage resists all of it. Flavor is the first issue. Lovage is not mild. It is not neutral. It does not politely disappear into the background. It announces itself. One leaf can season an entire pot of soup. One stem can flavor liters of stock. For thousands of years, this was considered a strength. But in the 20th century, food was no longer designed around nourishment or depth. It was redesigned around mass production. Mildness became a feature. Uniformity became mandatory. Predictability became profit. And lovage failed every test that industrial food demanded. Modern celery, the plant that replaced it, was bred specifically to solve those problems. In the 19th century, European farmers began selecting celery varieties with weaker flavor, thicker stalks, and upright growth. The goal was not taste. The goal was control. By burying celery stalks during growth, farmers discovered they could bleach out bitterness and create a sweeter, blander product. This process, called blanching, produced celery that offended no one and impressed no one. It shipped well. It stacked neatly. It looked identical from plant to plant. And most importantly, it died every year. That last point matters more than people realize. Annual plants create dependency. Every season, farmers must buy seeds again. Seed companies profit repeatedly. Equipment manufacturers profit repeatedly. Fertilizer suppliers profit repeatedly. Perennials break that cycle. Lovage does not require yearly purchases. Once established, it divides itself. Neighbors share root cuttings. Seeds drop and regrow naturally. From a business perspective, lovage is a disaster. It produces food without ongoing transactions. As industrial agriculture expanded in the early 20th century, crops that did not fit the model were quietly sidelined. They were not banned. They were not attacked publicly. They were simply excluded from promotion, excluded from research funding, excluded from grocery shelves, excluded from culinary education. Cookbooks stopped mentioning them. Seed catalogs minimized them. Grocery buyers stopped asking for them. Within a few decades, the average American cook had no idea lovage had ever existed. By the 1950s, celery had taken its place entirely. The irony is brutal. What we now call celery flavor is a diluted echo of what lovage used to provide. Nutritionally, the replacement was inferior. Lovage contained significantly higher levels of vitamins A and K, more calcium, more B vitamins, and higher concentrations of beneficial plant compounds like quercetin. But nutrition was never the deciding factor. Logistics were. Lovage does not harvest cleanly. You cannot send a machine through a field and cut it all at once. You cannot guarantee identical stems. You cannot lock its flavor into a standardized profile. And because it keeps growing, it does not align with seasonal marketing cycles. Industrial systems require crops that start and stop on command. Lovage ignores commands. It hust grovus. That is why it survived for over a millennium in monastery gardens across Europe. Monks did not need efficiency. They needed reliability. Lovage gave them that. Even today, in the ruins of abandoned monasteries, lovage can still be found growing wild, long after the buildings collapsed and the communities disappeared. That alone should tell you how resilient it is. Compare that to modern celery. It requires constant water, heavy fertilization, pest control, labor-intensive harvesting, refrigerated transport, short shelf life, entire infrastructure built to support a plant that exists for one season. And yet, that plant dominates supermarket shelves because it fits the system, not because it is better. By the late 20th century, lovage was being described in gardening magazines as a celery substitute. That language matters. The original had been reframed as the replacement. The perennial foundation of Western cuisine was now presented as an alternative to the industrial annual that displaced it. This kind of linguistic inversion does not happen accidentally. It happens when memory is erased. Once people forget a baseline, anything that comes later feels normal. The food system depends on that amnesia. Today, the global celery industry is worth billions. Hybrid seeds are patented. Farmers are legally prohibited from saving them. Each growing season resets the dependency loop. Lovage offers no such leverage. That is why it lives on the margins now, in heirloom seed collections, in permaculture gardens, in the yards of people who inherited it without knowing what it was. Ask a grocery store producer manager about lovage, and you will get a blank stare. Ask a medieval cook, and they would not understand how you cook without it. This is not nostalgia. This is not romanticism. This is a practical observation about resilience. Perennial food plants stabilize households. They reduce reliance on supply chains. They smooth out shortages. They survive disruptions. Annual monocrops do the opposite. They centralize control. They increase fragility. They require constant inputs. When systems break, annuals fail first. Lovage does not care if trucks stop running. It does not care if seed catalogs disappear. It comes back every spring regardless. That is precisely why it was allowed to fade from public awareness. Bringing it back does not require permission. It requires memory. Lovage is still available. Heirloom seed suppliers sell it cheaply. Gardeners who grow it are usually desperate to give divisions away because one plant quickly becomes many. It grows in cold climates and warm ones. It tolerates neglect. It tolerates frost. It tolerates heat if given partial shade. The first year is quiet. The second year, it explodes. From that point on, you have a constant source of flavor for over a decade. Leaves for fresh use. Leaves for drying. Stems for cooking or candying. Seeds for spice. Roots for boiling. One planting replaces years of purchases. That is the real reason it matters. The disappearance of lovage was not about taste. It was about control. The industrial food system favors plants that keep you buying, keep farmers dependent, keep supply chains mandatory. Lovage breaks that logic. It feeds without asking. It returns without replanting. It refuses to be standardized. And because of that, it was quietly pushed aside. But it never went extinct. It waited. It waited in monastery ruins, in forgotten gardens, in seed bolts, in the margins of history, and it is still waiting now. If you want food that does not require constant permission, start with perennials. Start with the plants that survived empires. Start with the ones they stopped talking about. This is Lost Nature Vault. We uncover the plants that built civilizations and were buried by systems that could not control them. The vault stays open.